Yep. Hi, welcome to those who are here and those who may be joining us in the future on the recorded Zoom. I'm Lorianne Stevens, and I am presenting today for CTE on best practices in mentoring graduate instructors. So I've been the supervisor of the graduate instructors' first year of teaching, first 2 semesters of teaching. This is my 13th year of mentoring them. And that's why I'm presenting. I've gathered lots of knowledge and hopefully wanted to talk to people about ideas to improve and even approach mentoring graduate students. So the first thing I wanted to do to begin was to ask a question, 2 questions. What do you like about mentoring graduate students? Like, what is rewarding about mentoring graduate students? And what are the challenges of mentoring graduate students? So, Charles or Daryl, want to start with what do you like about mentoring graduate students?
Well, do I need these?
So they can hear.
Oh.
Like they can hear with there's some mics in the room, but
Okay. Well, I've just I enjoy how passionate they are about the subject matter, and they're always sort of on point. And I mean, let me qualify that. So the energy is more focused sometimes than maybe certainly with non-major undergrads, but undergrads. So challenging is they have so many expectations on them that it when they're struggling with prioritizing things that I find challenging to help them prioritize things.
Yeah.
Which may be relevant to this too, right? Because they're trying to get a degree while they're learning how to teach for the first time.
Yeah. Daryl, do you want to add your thoughts about what you like about mentoring graduate students? I know a lot of graduate students like having you as their mentor. So
thank you. I mean, that's good to know.
We can't hear Daryl yet.
Oh, can you hear me now?
Not yet. I see the audio's on here on our side.
check.
Maybe here.
Maybe. Okay. Room volume. I think this is it. Daryl, do you mind saying hello to see if we can hear you?
Hello? Can you hear?
Ah, interesting. Okay, sounds. This is the only speaker is this one. Let me try this. I will connect the audio on my laptop and we'll see if we can hear you from this. Go ahead.
I mean, I could also use chat.
Still can't hear. So I hate to make you type it in the chat.
I type fast.
There you go. We can hear you.
We heard you. Say it again.
Oh, okay. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay. Well, to address the questions, I'd say that the thing I like most about mentoring graduate students is learning from them. I mean, it's a cliche, but actually the reverse of a cliche. You can actually teach an old dog new tricks, and I've been teaching for a while, but I'm always open to improving my teaching, and it's good to hear from people who are newer to teaching to get their perspective, because they're still students, and so therefore they are looking at things from not only an instructor's perspective but a student's perspective, and it's very important for me to hear that. So for very selfish reasons, I enjoy learning. The challenge is connected to that, which is that I want to show people how what I think are some best practices in teaching, but they may not be the best practices. I'm going by the way I was trained 30 years ago, and the way I've been practicing teaching, and so it's a negotiation. That's the challenge, really, is that in meeting with graduate students and talking about how to approach a class, I want to say it's like, this is how we should do things. And then they'll say, well, why don't we try this thing? And I'm like, okay, that's great. Let's figure out a kind of a common ground. And that kind of negotiation is very important. It's good. It's good for growth, but it's challenging on both ends because if people are expecting me to just say, this is how things should be done, I don't like to do it that way. And so we have to really kind of just keep working through that. And that's where some of the best teaching comes from. But that's the challenge. It's that I am not the authority, and I really want to hear what other people are doing and say, let's try doing it that way and see if your way works better than mine. So, and that's, I guess that's the challenge. It's a process of negotiation. That was a very long answer to the question.
Thank you very much. I agree, and it's that negotiating between your advice and leading them, like, or holding their hand as they're walking through, sort of showing them the path, but also giving them the freedom to guide themselves through to answers as part of their professional development. So today, I wanted to cover a few things. Identify what mentors do, and beside the PowerPoint to this will be shared for you. Identify what mentors do. Consider the research, some research. Consider different approaches to mentoring. Identify mentees' challenges, because we just identified our challenges, and we need to think about the challenges that they face. And then talk about mentoring the burgeoning professional, trying to encourage their individual strengths, identify them, give them some confidence, and help them follow their intuition as college instructors. So what does a mentor do? I've had some help from University of New Mexico's graduate instructor site, mentoring site. And here we have a list of really good what should we call it, responsibilities that we shoulder as mentors. So we, of course, getting to know our mentee is really important. You can't really mentor someone if you don't really know who they are. And that takes time. Model and guide excellence in research, teaching, and service. Demystify graduate school. I think that's an important thing that's not written about really, but it's something that we do, and we sort of feel out as the students are trying to understand what graduate school is. Establish effective communication, facilitate professional development, assist with finding other mentors, model professional responsibility, and support mental health and well-being. So I wanted to ask which of these or other contributions that we make as mentors do you think is an immediate need for graduate students that you know or mentor, and why that's an immediate need? And then a follow-up to that is, how can we address these needs without overburdening ourselves as mentors? So first, which ones do you think are immediate needs for our graduate students?
If I had to pick without thinking too hard about it, I would just say demystify graduate school, facilitate professional development. But that is also sort of where I've been working with them anyway. So maybe that's my own bias. So I was working with Chris over the summer, co-teaching a writing workshop, which is, again, like getting them to professional publication. And then I've been helping with the job market stuff and coaching them. And I guess that's also facilitate professional development. But then in all those, I've been talking to them about process of grad school and trying to give them resources, books and websites to think about.
Mm-hmm.
So that's where I go to.
Do you think that we need to have, like, all the schools need to have a system in place to do that, like collaborative system in place, so that it's there, first of all, and it's written down somewhere that the faculty have access to?
Yes, and I wonder if the Moody School has something like this. I know that they're doing things, but it's not really visible to me if they are. But
I don't think it's set in stone and written. I know that there's a lot more thought about mentoring graduate students. I mean, they're launching an award for graduate student mentors that's coming up. I know that because the CT is going to be involved, where the faculty mentors that win this award will receive some money that they can spend for their graduate students and whatever research or initiatives they're working on, but also they get a stipend themselves. So that's kind of like something, right? Yeah. So it is in their mind. But even on the CTE, we've talked about mentoring in different capacities. We even thought about starting with a graduate student mentoring focus, since Moody seems to have some interest in that, and then move into more faculty mentoring, which is another area that we would like to support faculty. So I don't think it's set in stone, but I think it will be lovely if there was a process or something that will give faculty a blueprint on how to be a better mentor, what is the expectations are. And I know that Engage Dallas had something. Was it Engage Dallas? Or one of the units. I don't know if it wasn't Engage Dallas. It was some other unit on campus that they had a mentoring tool for a while. Do you remember? Do you know what? I will think about it in a second. I can share. But they had some instructions on how to be a better mentor, but I think it will also include undergraduate students. And I remember that they put in a link to this online tool that you could volunteer to mentor students, and they could sign up for it. And they had about instructions. But if you guys don't know what that tool is not being, advertised enough that all faculty would know. So that's problematic.
And there are it's wonderful that we have the Moody School to create these kinds of, this kind of thoughtfulness expressed in projects and the outreach to the different colleges. But there also are domain-specific tasks in mentoring that, like in the sciences, the things that they need to be doing that perhaps are different from what we're doing in the humanities. And yeah, so I think that having something within each school to lay this out would be helpful.
I remembered the Office of Engaged Learning had a tool for mentoring, and they also had some guidelines on how to be a better mentor. So I think that they still have that. It's like a database that you can go and put in your profile, and there's like instructions how to be a better mentor, how to be a better mentee. But
yeah, and I think too that would be really useful if departments then had just a meeting for faculty talking about mentoring.
Absolutely.
Like what mentors should do, and not just what they need to be doing, but the emotional load of doing that and how to navigate your time as a professional and also mentoring.
Oh, absolutely. If I can share my 2 cents about the list of one of the things that will be important, I feel like the getting to know the mentee is very important. Just not getting to know them like on a personal level, but also their professional interests, right? Like getting to know what do they want to be when they grow up, so that you can better guide them to the professional development resources or the other things that align with what they want to be when they grow up. So if we just kind of tell them what to do, but we're not getting to know them, creating that alignment, I think they would be less inclined to put full effort.
Yeah, I think too. I think we, at least in the English department, I think we do a good job of modeling excellence in teaching with the TAs and in service. But along those same lines of getting to know what your mentees' professional goals are, they may not want to mimic to be a mini you and be a professor. We want them to be a mini me sometimes, but in order for us to help them, guide them to excellence in research, we need to know what their long-term goals are, and that may determine how they're doing research and where and with whom, making those professional connections.
So I added to the chat a resource. So I found an Office of Engaged Learning. The Mustang Mentors is that platform. So it's an undergraduate students are invited to participate as a mentor-mentee in the Mustang Mentor program. And they have a mentor collective, which is a peer mentoring platform. So there's information about the mentee experience and signing up to become a mentor through that, which gives, I remember as I was talking to them about this new platform, there is a little bit of training on how to become to be a mentor, and a little bit on how to kind of balance being a mentor and not, losing track of time and having a good work-life balance.
Yes. So I'm going to move on to the next slide. What I found that I spend a lot of time doing is balancing the professional advice and to the graduate instructors and supporting their mental health and well-being. I think that is an important part of the strategy that creates, ironically, the most emotional load on us, having to navigate their emotional load. So if you do a little bit of research over the past 10 years, what we're seeing is trauma. Graduate school is traumatic. Terrible effects on people's health. And these are all peer-reviewed articles, and there are a lot more. Tales of neglect and sadism. Now that's pretty serious. That's 1999, the oldest one I have. But it's all about how graduate school creates trauma for the students, and how to navigate that. A 2014 report from another peer-reviewed article. I mean, this is all before COVID too, right? So with the additional physical and emotional traumas that created. So we have 10 years ago, case studies reported some data on the mental health of graduate students. And we see that 64% of doctoral students in the arts and humanities were clinically depressed. That's a really high amount. And then in 2017, the next year, the Center for Collegiate Mental Health reported that students were using mental health services 20 to 30% more than they did 5 years before, dealing with anxiety and depression. So in a way, that's good. They're seeking help, support, but did it stem the crisis? Then we had COVID happen shortly after that. So, yeah.
Was that second stat all college students, or is that just graduate students?
Graduate students.
The Center for Collegiate Mental Health.
Yeah.
And I was also interested that the first one is arts and humanities. I assume the second one is all across the
board. Yes.
Thanks.
And we have the actual article down here. So if you want to take a look at it. Yeah, that's okay. It's very tiny. So here's a report, another extensive study measured by clinically validated scales of anxiety and depression among graduate students. Again, it's 2018. They surveyed 2,200 individuals. 90% were PhD students and 10% were master's students. And these are from different countries. It's not just America, 26 different countries. But it also covered biological, physical sciences, engineering, humanities, and other. So we can see levels of anxiety and depression here, but I want to focus on D because it's about mentorship and how mentorship correlates with the anxiety and depression levels of the graduate students. And you can see that 50% disagree that they were provided mentorship, provided ample support, provided had a positive emotional impact on the students. It's all 50%, approaching 50% or more. And then depression correlates with the fact that they don't have mentorship, and if they do, the mentorship does not provide positive support or an asset to their career. I think this is very telling, feeling valued by the mentor. Those rates are high, I think, too high. if we value the mental health of our students, and if we believe that mental health is important, which is affected as grad students are forming and inhabiting new identities, seeking fulfillment through their educational success and trying to contribute something of substance to the domain. They're doing all of these things. We have to think about how targeted mentoring can better facilitate that. So the other thing that is obviously contributing to the anxiety and stresses is our financial burdens. It's not something that we can control individually. We have limited control over that. We can advocate, but we can't make any changes. This was a study by SMU's Moody Graduate School from this spring, March of this year. They conducted a study about essentially financial burdens and their incomes and stipends. And they came to some actionable conclusions and recommendations to raise the level of stipends, increase the summer support, and establish housing assistantship programs. So I think those are all great. But here are some of the actual responses from the students. I wish that I could say that it is enough for me to live on, but if I only relied on the money I got from TAing, I'd be living at or around Dallas's poverty line. So I supplement with working outside. Most of the grad students in my program, and myself included, are constantly worried about money and have incurred credit card debt or had to work a second job or both in order to make ends meet. I have exhausted all of my savings and I'm now exhausting my retirement funds. Lack of money is the number one reason I consider dropping out of SMU on a monthly basis. So these are all significant factors that are adding to the stress. And then one more set of data from our own school. All right, so I wanted to know essentially our retention rates and graduation rates. And Dr. Itkin said that they don't really it's difficult to track the retention and completion since some of them come and go and they're on their own timeline and they're some are part-time students, especially in the master's program doing one class or two classes a semester. But their goal is to have PhD students graduate within 6 years. So that's the goal. And what we see is up here, we have, am I able to go up? We have a laser. We have a laser. No. I don't know. That's okay. I don't want to touch it. I'm afraid. Up here we have for the last group of students coming in at 2018, 6 years ago. Is that 6 years ago? Or yeah. We have 58%. But if we look at the minority graduation rates, we can see 25%. And essentially across the board for minorities, they are finishing at much lower rates than all ethnicities altogether. Right? So we can see that ethnicity may have other stressors that are contributing to their not finishing or lagging behind. Same for masters. With a 3-year rate or 4-year rate, it's pretty high, 82%, 85%. But then when you look over here, it's better than the PhD, but it's still lagging 10% behind for minorities. So I bring this up because I think that we need to consider all the different factors that our students struggle with that maybe we don't see, but are there. So my approach is to mentor the whole human. I teach the class. I have to assign a pass or fail. They have to meet deadlines, but I'm also constantly reminding myself that these are, not just students. They're people with passions and individual lives that I'm not privy to that are affecting them in ways that I have no idea how to manage, or it's not my duty to manage it. It's just my duty to be there if they need me or advice. So what I've done to try to help them as a mentor is realize that syllabus templates free up time and mental space for the students. Now, this is very different from when I was in graduate school, where they said, you're going to teach creative writing, go make a syllabus. And it was that sink or swim approach. And I think that that is what a lot of us experienced going to graduate school. And having the program, I think, for the teaching practicum has been helpful for the students, not only because it creates a cohort community, but they're not sort of dog paddling out there on their own, wondering if what they're doing is normal or correct, or even admirable. It also frees up time and mental space so they can devote their time to graduate studies, which I emphasize many times throughout the semester. Look, your priority is to do your graduate work. It's very tempting to really get into the planning of teaching, but we have to balance that. And the reason they have the template is so that they can focus on their graduate studies. A cohort needs to bond over more than trauma, which was kind of my experience. We would get together and just talk about all of our traumas and the difficulties of being a graduate teacher. But I think regular meetings with the cohort, on a consistent basis, like weekly, can build a sense of agency, confidence, and problem-solving skills together. And a mentor can be part of those meetings, not necessarily leading the meetings, just listening to help understand them. And that's a place where we can get to know our mentees better. Answer administrative questions and listen to classroom questions. So that took me some time to understand that I didn't need to have the answer for every single problem for students. When they came to me, they want the answer. What do I do? And I learned that when they have a question about policy or administrative responsibilities, those need answers right away. But if they have a question about what do I do in the classroom, how do I address the situation, how can I teach this? My students aren't getting it. I think listening to them and then asking them the question back, well, what do you think? What are your ideas here? And a lot of times they come to a really wonderful answer, possibility on their own, just talking it out. And rather than my saying, oh, well, my idea is this, I would do it this way, which leads them to sort of parrot what I would do, which may not be the best thing for them. It may not work in their classroom. And then finally, I cling to this idea that you praise in public, critique in private. That praise is really important for the graduate students to build their confidence. And critique is also important, but I think that it should always be done in private so that there's not that extra anxiety that doesn't need to be there. It's already hard to be critiqued by someone, even in private. Yes.
I really love that point. It just makes me think too. I kind of think those terms are applicable as an email as well. Like an email isn't a great place to write out a critique maybe of a student. It's better to just have a conversation if it's a critique. I don't know. What do you think about that?
I totally agree. In fact, I tell my undergraduate students, I never discuss grades in email. If you want to talk about your grade, come on into my office and let's talk. Let's chat. It's hard to parse tone for students, and so it can lead to some unintentional hurt feelings and anger and other emotional responses.
We got clappy hands.
Hands, yay. Yeah. You want to add something, Daryl?
Oh, I just wanted to echo that.
You're muted again.
Can you hear me now?
Okay.
Hold on just a second. She's going to turn you on, I think.
I mean, are you muted? Go say something.
Say something.
Test.
No, he's not on again. Poor Daryl.
Okay. I hear something on the background.
Okay.
Yay.
Okay.
Yes.
I just wanted to echo what Charles said and what you're saying, Lori, because I've in recent years I've moved away. Most of my undergraduates and graduate students, I've moved away as much as possible from talking about their work through email, for all the reasons you just said. The email, first of all, tone in email is extremely hard to read, and getting a critique by email of anything, especially of a person, is really difficult, I think, for most people to handle um, uh, in any situation. So, at many times, just sitting down face to face with someone, we can actually figure out what the issue is, and offer a mix of media to actually help somebody with a particular issue. I have grad students that I've been mentoring who are not physically here, so they're remote, or or we just meet via Zoom, and we get a lot more work done in those Zoom meetings than we would if emailing back and forth. And in the past, of course, people would just do things by email, and that probably added to a lot of trauma pre-COVID. I think that this is something that is just much more productive just to talk face to face. Even if you have to give a very strong critique of someone, it's much better to actually just really talk it out and really find out where the differences are, than you could just by typing out a very long and probably very frustrating email.
Yes, I find that, sorry. I find that when I'm observing the graduate students teach, I try immediately to have a debriefing afterwards and chat. And I ask, how did you feel about today's class? Do you feel like the students left the class and understood the goals that you had, the learning outcomes that you had planned? And, if you had to do it again, if you had to teach a second class, would you make any changes or tweaks to what you did? And it's speaking to them in person and having them contribute to the self-assessment process is really helpful, especially when you need to address some things that aren't going well in the classroom. It's always good for them to talk about it first and then get the emailed assessment, so that they're not, because if you do it in the reverse, they're panicking when they read the recommendations. Okay, a couple more things here. Graduate students need transparency. That's really important. Clear, verbalized, and written expectations help grad students self-assess honestly and methodically. They need to know when they're not meeting minimum expectations, and they need to help create a plan to get back on track. So they can't just be told, you're deficient here. They need to be part of the process to figure out how to get back on track to meet those expectations. Second, gender, race, and ethnicity are lenses, and we can't ignore the fact that people are being viewed through lenses, and that they are viewing through these lenses. Grad instructors inhabit triple academic identities: how they're perceived through their students' eyes, how they're perceived through their own eyes, and through their professors' eyes. And these often don't align. And lenses like gender, race, and ethnicity further filter the perceptions, and with students trying to balance these identities and form them. Daryl?
Yes, I wanted to just...
Hold on, we're trying to get your microphone on. Go ahead.
Yeah, I wanted to just touch on the thing about about transparency and about giving people expectations. I don't know if you're going to get to this later in your presentation, but one thing that occurred to me about situations that I had to deal with in the past when I was the department chair or director of graduate studies, and this is directly addressing the issue of how people mentor and how old models of mentoring can be really problematic. Is one assumption that a lot of faculty from who've been trained long ago, it could be a quarter century, it could be longer, whatever, is that they think I am the graduate student is a nuisance. I must disappear and not be available to the graduate student until they are desperate for my input. And they should not bother me when I'm trying to do whatever else it is I'm doing. Um, and the problem I'm saying about that is the transparency part is if you have a student is not coming up to whatever standard it is, if you've even given them a standard, that's something that they need to know early on rather than later in their program or later in the dissertation process, later in whatever it is, because I've seen that happen where a mentor will, a director will just disappear, and they'll be like, "Is that still my student?" Or they act like they don't even know their own mentees. And I've seen this happen over and over again, and that of course is, I'm sure, contributing to the very negative stressors on graduate students. But that model is completely invalid and outdated. If there was ever a time that was appropriate, and I think that transparency part, telling people up front that this is how you want to work with them, and this is what your expectations are, will save everybody a lot of stress, even if that relationship is, please don't bother me for these 3 months out of the year. If you tell somebody that up front, at least they know that's how your relationship is going to unfold. That bit of transparency is worth more than gold, rather than just assuming that somebody understands they're not supposed to listen to contact you, or just not giving them any kind of feedback when they really need it.
Bravo. I totally agree. And the next slide, I'm going to talk about that a little bit. The last thing that I wanted to say is that mentors need boundaries and balance too. That mentors need to seek help where they can get it, even therapy if they need to at times, when you suspect your mentor meter is operating at stressful levels. So being attuned to our own needs as mentors. Okay, so let's talk about how we address these burdens. The last thing I'll say about the emotional burdens of teaching is that graduate instructors struggle with imposter syndrome because they struggle with this framing of being incompetent, according to some of their professors, right, in graduate school, while also being juxtaposed as colleagues or teachers. So they're trying they're essentially asking, who am I? Am I an instructor when I sign up for this meeting, or am I a student? Who am I? And they're asking that question all the way through. I mean, they're even asking it now in their second year with my students, who am I? And it has to do also with like permissions, what permissions they're granted by the university. So how can we help our graduate instructors develop confidence and discover their own strengths as instructors? So I want to pose that question and then end with that question. How can we help graduate instructors develop their confidence and discover their own strengths as professors? What I would say is 3 things. The first, help them develop a teaching philosophy. The second is to approach mentoring as like the golden rule, treating others the way you would like to be treated, and not through memory or tradition. I can't go back to my experiences of what my mentors did and just repeat that. I do like to take the best mentoring experiences that I had from my mentors and apply that to what I'm doing, adapt that to what I'm doing as a mentor, but also considering the things that didn't work in my mentoring experience from my advisors, and try to fill in the gaps that way. And the third thing is really expanding what Daryl was saying, creating a mentoring alliance. Some people call it a mentoring contract. So teaching philosophy is first. In this study, Robinson found that 62.5% of graduate level pedagogy courses require the writing of a teaching statement. And I think that should be across the board in all domains. Anyone who's teaching should develop a teaching philosophy. Beginning early, asking graduate students to reflect on what they view as the characteristics of a good teacher and discussing their responses as a group to understand why they view those characteristics as important. It's really illuminating. We do this in boot camp, talking about the teachers that influenced them most, inspired them most, and what were the characteristics. What did they do? What were their actions and their words that inspired you? And who do you want to be like, in other words? And then also thinking about really bad experiences with professors and what was it that left that indelible memory about bad mentorship and what they do with that. After processing their thoughts on effective teaching, they can then integrate their developing methodology throughout the course. So it's also important to revisit the teaching philosophy. So midway through the semester, revisit it. How do you see yourself? What is your teaching persona? And then again at the end of the semester, and keep revisiting the teaching philosophy, because as you have collect new experiences, that may change. So mentoring principles, the golden rule. Essentially, these are my approaches. Kindness and respect. Students are whole people who have families, relationships, passions, and underlying anxieties. And just remembering to be respectful to the students. Availability and responsiveness. So again, what Daryl was saying about people disappearing. When you walk down your department and you see a series of closed doors, what is that saying to the students? If you're walking through and it feels like a ghost town, what is that implying to your graduate students and also to undergraduate students? Open doors send a message to the students, right? Again, we have to sort of balance, okay, I need to get this done. I'm going to close my door because I need to get this done. But even having a sign such as, please knock, I'm here, please knock if you're here to visit me. That encourages people who have questions to come knock on your door, but also lets people know if they're just popping in to say hi, colleague, that maybe that's not the best time. Patience. They don't always know as much as we do, and they're still learning, and we can help clarify these things. So trying to not get angry and offended when somebody does something that you told them not to do, or you had it on your written guidelines. Being patient. And then sometimes they need a little advice on professionalism itself, just the simple things that we don't even think about, such as how to dress as instructors with very little money to go buy professional clothing, how to present at conferences, obviously, rehearsing, being there as a sounding board for rehearsals for conferences, providing opportunities to interact with other professionals in the field. I remember when I was a graduate student, we had Robert Olin Butler come, the Pulitzer Prize winner, visit us. And my advisor asked me if I would pick up this visiting esteemed guest from the airport. And I was so excited because, I was there. I was selected and I got to talk to him on the way to the hotel to drop him off. And that was special. And I think that I don't know how, if this sort of is a tricky situation, sending students off to go do these things. But I think it's still valuable making these kinds of connections. He eventually wrote a blurb for my first novel. So it was an important connection. And so I valued that. Fostering self-efficacy and problem solving. So being their sounding board, asking them, what do you think? What in your experience leads you to, these options? Anything else that you can think of that helps foster a good mentor-mentee experience?
Go ahead, Daryl.
I was going to say that one thing that might help, this is following up what you just said, Lori, about meeting Bob Butler, is getting people involved in some of the small little niceties of what we do in the professional world really helps picking up somebody from the airport is a really great opportunity. But even more valuable is going back to the first character element that we should address that Charles had listed or had cited from your list about demystifying the graduate school experience. Demystifying academia goes a very long way. Understanding that we do things like this. We pick up people from the airport, but also we have things like deans and provosts and associate deans and associate provosts and chairs, and each of these people have roles that they might need to know about because they might be in them one day, but also just to know that when you're meeting, for example, a dean, or a chair, you don't have to be deferential, but you probably want to be your best behavior because these are people who sometimes have money and they're the ones who hold the purse strings. And that's to understand some of these political and organizational relationships that go on in academia saves an awful lot of stress and anxiety if people know about them. Rather than learn later, this is like that they put their feet in their mouths. I mean, it's important to let people know that, okay, we're about to go to this thing. The dean's going to be there. Everybody basically be on your best behavior. People need to know that, and they need to know the significance of these kinds of interactions, and why that and how that will allow them perhaps to have greater opportunities later. Just demystifying these things, just trying to tell people, just giving them a clue and just saying, don't talk about this in front of the dean. That helps a lot. And so people really understand how to develop those kinds of professional relationships.
That's great. It reminds me too that, one other way that we can help develop professionalism is if there's no reason why a student, a graduate student, let's say an ABD student, couldn't attend or shouldn't attend a faculty meeting, I think it would be beneficial and enlightening for, let's say, an ABD graduate student to attend a department meeting and see what goes on behind the scenes. The first time I went to a department meeting, I was like, wow, they're talking about finances and voting on funding things. I had no idea. And I think that could be a way to sort of help them see what it's like to be in a department. And it's a different set of responsibilities and duties as a faculty member. So if there's nothing on the agenda that's private, right, that you would not want the student to, you could as a practice extend an invitation to an ABD student to observe, just sit and observe and see what's going on. I think it could be helpful in demystifying academia. Okay, and the last thing is a mentoring. Oh, yes, Daryl.
Well, I want to respond to that right quick.
She's going to turn on your microphone. Oh. Okay, go ahead.
I want to respond to that point right quickly. I'm of two minds about that. One is that yes, that is possible, but having been a faculty member and been in many, many faculty meetings, one reason why we don't invite graduate students to those meetings is it's like the teacher's lounge, because people speak very frankly about a lot of things, and sometimes people they speak frankly because they have that idea that it's just the teachers, so to speak, in one room. If it's a matter of getting people to see how Robert's Rules of Orders might function or how you can run a meeting effectively, yes. But many times I do not want to open that curtain. Certain things I think should be reserved for the faculty, but there are some, like you said, if there's nothing on the agenda that is terribly private, confidential, yes. But I think the same thing I just said earlier also applies. Faculty have to be on their best behavior if they're going to do that. And I'll just leave it at that.
Agreed. Okay, so thanks, Daryl. This last one is about the Mentoring Alliance. And I borrowed this from University of New Mexico. I think it's really smart. A Mentoring Alliance, I call it an alliance. I like it better than a compact or a contract. Is a written agreement that provides structure for mentors to outline expectations from and commitments to mentees and vice versa. The document provides a set of topics to discuss and requires the mentor-mentee to work together to establish guidelines and expectations for their mentoring relationship. So I'm not sure if this will take us to it, but here's an example where you have the contract or the alliance, I prefer, and the goals are written out, right? Strategies for achieving collective goals. Mentors' expectations of mentee. This is all about transparency. On communication, independence, accessibility, the mentee's expectations of a mentor, what the mentee needs. It reminds me of when you get an agent, when you get a literary agent, you have to interview the agent and see what kind of agent is it, that will that agent meet your expectations and needs. How many meetings, confidentiality, right? Discussing all the things that we don't really think of right away that we realize in the process, why we're having this problem. Why didn't we address this earlier? So I think that this is a good template that we can adapt for our own needs. And I think it would be good to have department-wide. Okay, let's go back to the presentation. Is this it? No. Okay. So I think this is close to the end, maybe the final slide. I want to ask in what ways we can support graduate students and graduate instructors as they navigate the balance between graduate study, professionalization, and a healthy, enriched personal life. It's a loaded question, but any sort of last comments on how we can help support them or even help balance the emotional burden of ourselves? Any thoughts?
Daryl, did you want to go before me?
I'll throw this. I'll stab at this.
Turning on your sound.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
It's not just low. It's complex. Because I think that finding ways to help show people how to balance, because we all have to balance different aspects of our jobs and what we're working on, and giving the emotional support. I think that what I've learned, especially in recent years, and of course it's been difficult, is that sometimes just listening. If you're going to be a mentor, sometimes the job of mentor is just to listen. It is just to let people talk about what's going on, professionally, even personally, if they so choose. Obviously, within reason, within clear professional boundaries. But I think that is very important. But to make this a little more focused, I think, for example, when somebody goes on the academic job market, that is one of the most difficult and for many people very traumatic aspects of the graduate school experience, is trying to find a job. For anybody in any profession, trying to find a job is extremely time consuming and emotionally difficult and draining. And I think one of the best ways to support people, even before they get to the job market, is to have a frank discussion about the fact that it is emotionally difficult and draining and time consuming, rather than just kind of say, well, everything will go great if you're one of the best people, you should get a job, which is what people did for many years, which is absolutely toxic. But people still do that. They ignore the fact that this is the state of the market. They ignore the emotional burden, and that is, of course, what makes it exponentially worse if you don't actually acknowledge the actual state of affairs out there. But also, and there's only so much we can do about that, but you can at least listen to somebody and hear what their concerns are, and give them the support that they need to know that again, because of imposter syndrome, that feeling of imposter syndrome, that they have a right to be there, and they have a right to do this, instead of just feeling that there is no place for them in that process. Now I'm talking about the job market, but this does apply, of course, to earlier stages of the graduate school experience. I think that listening part is really important.
Yes, I think that's really, really important. And it makes me think too that during the job market process, you might be going through a kind of handover of mentoring or sharing the mentoring burden. It would be great if we had students who recently got jobs in tenure track jobs, or even not in tenure track jobs, wherever, because they're going to different careers, to pair them up with someone who has been through that experience so that they can share their own experiences together. And that might help lessen the trauma that the students are going to, because they have that extra sounding board of somebody who's recently been through that experience, in addition to the, our help in the department. Thank you for coming and contributing your knowledge. That was wonderful. And my last slide is by Steven Spielberg. I think it's nice. The delicate balance of mentoring someone is not creating them in your own image, but giving the opportunity to create themselves. And that's what we're trying to do. Thank you so much for attending.
Thank you, Lori.